So in this video, I pose a question to the regulator community and any machinists or anybody interested in possibly taking on the endeavor of trying to regulate an unregulated bottle gun. We all know that the tube guns that are unregulated are very easily regulated by adding either a Yuma, Altiros, or Lane regulator, or any one of those good regulators. But no one really has, or I haven't seen, a solution to regulate unregulated bottle guns such as this Kral Puncher Jumbo. This is a great gun. I really love it. I know a lot of people do like it too. The only issue I'm having with it is regulating it. I would love to be able to, I'm sure a lot of people out there would too. And I pose the question, is it a practical, cost-effective idea? When we're talking about a $600 gun, add on a $150 bottle, and you're at $750, this is a pretty powerful gun with some really good features. Yeah, it's not extremely polished, but if you add a regulator to this item, let's say right now we're at about, $6 and 150. We're about, $750. If you add another 150 to this and went to $900, that still would make this gun pretty amazing. So anyway, the question I have and what I'm posing, and I've been thinking about this, and maybe hopefully I'll spark somebody, a machinist, some of the regulator guys out there who think this might be possible. Maybe I'm nuts and maybe this is not worth doing. But let me briefly and quickly go. I don't want to belabor this, and I don't want to talk too much about it. But here's the bottom line. This gun, not being regulated, has what's called a drop. I guess they call it a drop block. Okay, so the valve comes out, goes down. Let me show you what that looks like. So I'll pull this up, and here's what we have. Okay, you have the breech block. Inside here is the valve and the poppet that is attached, screws into this drop down, this L-shaped item right here. Now, when I was thinking about this, I said, okay, where would you put a regulator? You'd put it between the bottle and the block. The problem is that'll push the bottle way out and make this gun not look very attractive and maybe be too forward, heavy, and tilt forward. But there's this space here. Now watch this. When I drop this back into the stock, let's put this back in the stock. There is, if you can see where my finger is wiggling, there's all this space, okay? And that space, in my opinion, would allow for a square block of aluminum to be made here, okay? So fill in this area here, make this a square block instead of having this all cut out right here. Don't cut this away. There's all that, and it would still look great because it would fit inside the stock at this point, okay? So let's put that in there one more time. You drop it down. There's all this space, and that space could be used to possibly create a regulated gun. Let me explain further. I have a little drawing. It's very, very rudimentary, but I don't know. I think it's a possibility. So let me show you what that looks like. Okay. Before we look at any drawings, I have here a Ninja bottle. Now, a few years ago, I learned how to adjust the 800 PSI output by using Belleville washers. And I kind of learned that inside here, it's not very complicated, okay? There is a piston, or I call it a piston, okay, with a bunch of Belleville washers or concave washers. But this right here is really the essence of a regulator, okay? So this sits inside here, has a seal here, has a seal. These are just flat washers. They sit on the bottom. They adjust the amount of pressure. But what really adjusts the pressure are these concave Belleville washers. I have 3 sets of 4, okay? But that's not really what I want to talk about today. What I want to talk about is we know that this particular item here, this little piston with the Belleville washers, is what creates regulated output pressure, okay? So by this pressing down on the interior of the bottle and the top of the bottle, you create a certain amount of pressure, output pressure. All right, let's take the bottle away and let's try to apply this concept. Let's see if we can see this. All right. So let's apply this concept of using a piston inside the block that I was talking about earlier. So this top little drawing here, okay, represents the current configuration of the Kral. There is a valve that goes into the breech, and then which is screwed in, and then there's a drop block with a screw that the bottle attaches to, okay? But there's all this empty space right here. I was thinking, and I'm not sure if this is possible. Now, there's two drawings here. One is just, we'll talk about that, but there's two drawings here. This top drawing shows really the essence of what I'm talking about. So you can use I was thinking you can use the original Kral valve parts. That would be the valve, the stem, the poppet, the spring, all of that, the threads. Create an aluminum block. It would be about 1 inch wide by 2.5 inches long. That would fit perfectly inside, and again, roughly 1 inch. It might be more, might be less. But again, something that fits inside the stock. Now, there would be 2 chambers, okay? There would be a hollowed out chamber here, and this would be the plenum that would hold the regulated air along with a little bit of space here. And I'm thinking that might be 50, 60, I don't know, hopefully 40, 50, 60 cc's, enough to supply a shot. Because remember, you have the poppet and the valve, and that's right up, butt up against this block. And then you'd have a little channel that'll go to a lower chamber, and that lower chamber would house the piston ring, as you see here, okay? It would house that piston ring, and you'd have on this side, and maybe even a little bit forward, because you don't really need that much space, you'd have your unregulated, so you can have your unregulated gauge. I put a gauge here, but let's just say it's here. You'd have your bottle pressure or unregulated gauge right here, okay? Then you'd have your fill nipple, which would fill into the bottle. And then on the other side, you'd have your regulated pressure, which you can then put a gauge on the side of the stock. And because the stock is perfect for that, it would almost look like a raw. You can have the gauge just drill out a hole, nothing, like a little U-channel on the stock on the side, and you can have a second gauge, which would be the regulated pressure. And I think it would look really cool. So my thinking, and I don't know if this is possible or if I'm being crazy or silly, but create an aluminum block about 2.5 inches by about 1 inch, again, enough to fit inside and match up. Use the original Kral valve, thread it here and screw the valve into the block. On the other end, use the Kral M18 by 1.5. I believe it's a separate thread, and screw that into the bottom of the block. Create a seat for this side and this side. So you'd have your regulated pressure on this side of the block and your unregulated pressure on this side of the block. Now, again, this is small enough, okay, only being about an inch and a quarter. Excuse me. This is small enough, being an inch and a quarter, that it should be able to fit nicely inside the bottom chamber. So you have your bottom, again, just to recap, bottle, your bottle attaches to the M18 by 1.5. That screws into the block. Inside the block, you have your piston with your Belleville washers, high pressure side, low pressure side, and a little channel going up to the second chamber on the top, okay, that would then feed the valve and the gun, excuse me, and the little transfer port, okay, that would be right here. So when the hammer hits the pin here, the air inside here, about 50, 60, or I don't know, 40, 50, or 60, I'm not even sure if there's enough cc's in here, would then be released up the transfer port and into the barrel. Again, I know this is very simple. At least I'm making it look simple. Am I crazy? Is this possible? Is there anyone out there that thinks this is possible or worth doing? Please let me know. Again, this is, I'm just putting it out there because I don't know where else to go with this idea. It's driving me crazy, and I would love to have the Kral Puncher Jumbo regulated, and it just seems like using an aluminum block, drilling it out, and maybe applying, you know, a Ninja piston or any other piston for that matter with the Belleville washers. And you could even, I mean, again, another item could be, and I don't know if this is possible. Again, just pointing, I'm just bringing this about. Could you put a regulator screw right here so that you, by screwing it in or out, you can adjust the regulator from outside of the gun without happening to have to take apart this block? So again, I pose this question. I hope this makes sense. I hope, I would love to hear what you guys think. Maybe, is there anyone out there who can do this? Except here, I'm sure somebody else has thought about this, and maybe this could work.